Good, lovely evening, everyone. Welcome to another ISACA webinar, ISACA Square Tables, hosted and organized by ISACA Netherlands chapter in collaboration with Noria, the IT Auditors Institute in the Netherlands. Before we start, my name is Ramzi Masri. I'm going to be your host for tonight, and I have a co-host, Khifo Boryart, who's also helping me with hosting this session for you. Very soon we will go to our speakers, but I would like to remind you of some house rules, if you don't mind. Please basically mute your microphone and stop sharing your video at all times during this session. In general, for CPEs, we need to make sure that the email address, as well as your first name and last name, are the same on Microsoft Teams. Someone asked if I cut my hair. Yes, that's true. Thank you. And the CPE points will be provided. Due to technical reasons, we cannot provide partial CPE, so we only provide one full CPE if you attended 50 full minutes of the event. This webinar will be, our Square Table will be recorded, and the slides will be shared after the event. We had a discussion with our speakers tonight, and they prefer to have all the questions at the end of the presentation. So please, if you have any question, put hashtag question in front of that. And I see a lot of people are concerned about my hair. This is weird, but it's a good start of the session. If you have any questions, please put hashtag question, because we allow people to interact on the chat. And if you don't have the hashtag question, we don't know as moderators that we should, at the end of the presentation, ask the question to our presenters. So it's important to use the hashtag question if you don't mind. Few things that I want to announce. Some of you know and maybe are a little bit bored from me repeating some announcements. But we want to tell you that we do have a very interesting webinar, 2nd of October, about preparing the human firewall against the threat landscape. It's going to be one of our new ways of doing webinars, mainly in a fireside chat kind of scenario between two industry experts. So it is worth joining in. If you have not registered, I would say go ahead and register. I'm not sure if you will be able to record it or not, so because we usually get this information very close to the event. So I would rather, if you can, attend it live. We are also, as usual, expanding our hand of collaboration. Just like this webinar, we are delighted and honored to have Antwerp Management School as our partners within this webinar. We have them also in a joint event between ISACA Netherlands chapter. Actually, the event is ISACA Belgium chapter, to be more accurate. And we are helping promote it, and we'll be part of it. Actually, one of our board members is speaking in that event, as well as Antwerp Management School. And I see there is a collaboration also with Cybersecurity Coalition and Beltag. I hope I'm not pronouncing the name incorrectly. I apologize for that upfront. That's going to be 14th of October. This is a physical event. It's not a hybrid event. It's not online. And if my memory is not failing me, that's in Antwerp. The details are on our website and also the website of ISACA Belgium. And I assume Antwerp Management School, but I'm not sure. At least the two ISACA chapters, I'm sure that we have the details there. As usual, and I want to stress on that one. If you miss that event, Risk Event 2024, the 6th of November 2024, in Spant, in Bussum, you're missing a lot. This year is the year of regulation. This year is the year of the effects of AI. This year is the year of the effects of a lot of things, including the war and even US politics. So it's just a small hint. We announced our agenda. This is not a political event, so I mentioned US politics is just one external factor, not really about the politics itself. And the tickets are running out in a way that we haven't seen before. So please, if you're interested, go save the date, register right away. Don't waste time. We also have another event that you are aware of, and it's much closer. It's 9th of October, which is Security Congress. That is sorry, I forgot to say something, that the risk event is usually PVAB, Nouria, and ISACA organized. Mainly ISACA is the main organizer, PVAB and Nouria are our partners, while the Security Congress is organized in full by the three entities. I even think risk event has an internal Auditors Institute, IIA. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think one of our partners, I have to revise that slide to have all the partners mentioned. The Risk Congress is 9th of October. I really think we are almost out of tickets. Maybe the last few tickets are there. So if you're also interested to get a more specific view on security and not just IT risk management in a broader sense, I would highly suggest that you go ahead and register if you find the tickets, to be honest, because they're running away very, very fast. Without further ado, I'm going to ask Professor Yuri to help me introduce the speakers. So, Yuri, off to you.
Thank you, Ramzi. Thank you very much. Also, pronunciation of the name Belthoek. Compliments for that. Yeah, again, we are happy to host for the 4th year here a Research with Impact as Antwerp Management School together with ISACA. And I would like to do a small kickoff on why we did this research journey. Well, first of all, we are very excited to share this journey with the ISACA members, which basically began with a key challenge that was meeting the growing regulatory demands for cybersecurity and risk management in the financial industry. The difficulty with a lot of frameworks is that they are quite static in nature. For example, the ISO took 9 years to update itself. The NIST 852.3 had a typical revision cycle of 3 years. And meanwhile, regulations continue to surge. Yeah? And between 2019 and today, the EU introduced 4 times more laws than the US. So we see that Europe has more laws, regulations, and standards than, for example, the US. And an average, normally it takes 19 months to agree and sign new laws. So that takes quite some time. And last week, Mario Draghi pointed out that this a huge amount of new tech regulations is overwhelming our companies in the EU. And he basically talks about we are killing our own companies. This report, last week presented by Mario Draghi, is also an appeal to everyone in this risk and some compliance function. Very interesting read. We basically encountered the same issue when we started with Kartik and Erwin. And if we're looking ahead with all these new tech regulations, we're looking at 160,000 mid-market organizations, plus 13 million small and medium organizations and industries like fintech, medtech, mobile tech, that all must comply to new regulations. And to meet these demands, collaborations is essential. So it's important to work together. We need to provide feedback to regulators on what works and where innovation is required, and how we as security professionals must be more pragmatic. Erwin Laros and Kartik Rajagopalan, both working in the financial industry. At that point, Kartik was working at NN Group and Erwin was working at Achmea, recognized this and led this research effort in the financial industry. They gathered insight from 120 respondents across the 10 institutions throughout the Benelux. And this feedback was well received by the regulator. We basically submitted this final report to the Dutch Central Bank, and they were very happy with it. And it's now being expanded to other industries by the Antwerp Management School, for example, to logistics, maritime industry, and retailing. With that, I would like to turn it to Erwin and Kartik to share more about their findings of the Antwerp Management School study, and also welcome you to answer questions from us to you when you put them in the Q&A or in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuri. Myself, Kartik Rajagopalan. We basically work in the financial sector and I work for NN. So that's why our project was focused on financial world. Why? Because financial system is an integral element of everyone's life, since it serves as a marketplace for money and assets, allowing capital to be efficiently allocated where it is most needed. Through intermediation, the financial sector plays an essential part in the economy's operation. Simply put, the financial sector serves as a conduit between savers and borrowers, taking cash, for example, from the savers through deposits, example, and lending them to those who need to borrow, whether they are individuals, business, or governments. IT and digitalization makes it easier for new innovations and in general make life easier with accessibility, comfort, and customization. With new technology and innovation in the financial organization, process becomes more easier and efficient, less error prone, and can change quickly in meeting the changing demands of not only our customers, our consumers, but also of the regulatory body. Lots of organizations in various sectors are moving towards modern way of working like Agile, DevOps, and so on, and using cloud technologies. Agile basically enables organizations to adjust quickly to market changes and complete more projects on time. DevOps has been shown to improve software delivery speed, efficiency, and one of the most significant advantages of implementing DevOps method and culture is that it eliminates silos. It enables communication between the teams in an organization. The world of IT infrastructure has been irrevocably transformed by cloud computing. Agile and DevOps team nowadays expect instant availability, and they basically expect limitless scalability also. Financial organizations are no different, and they are also opting for Agile, DevOps, and supported by the cloud infrastructure. However, at the same time, the digitization has also led to new types of crimes. Cyber attacks and cyber losses have constantly increased, whereas the traditional theft and burglary cases have constantly declined. Cyber criminals target not only consumers but also the financial institutions itself. As per DNB, the number of successful cyber attacks on bank doubled in the period between 2018 to 2020. 5% of pension funds and insurers were also victims of successful attack in 2021. In a worst case scenario, if of DDoS, for example, all electronic payments will be down. This could cause serious disruption to the economy and to the society of a country. To ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, the three pillars of information security of a financial organization system and data, it is very important to get some basic policies and standards. The regulatory bodies appointed by the state authority, in our case DNB, set these policies and standards. DNB provides a standard of good practice for the financial organization in the Netherlands. The guidelines provided by DNB are high-level, principle-based, and usually are methodology and usually are technology agnostic. This standard of good practice provides guidance on governance, organization, people, process, technology, facilities, and outsourcing topics, and are based on COBIT's maturity model. In the Netherlands, the financial organizations like ourselves are obliged to perform a self-assessment based on the controls as defined by DNB. As with any self-assessment, the results depends on the maturity of the organization, of the people, and so on. So there are bound to be different interpretations and different ways the controls are designed tracked and tested. These differences were already present in the traditional setup, where there are lots of detailed best practices documentation and white papers available. However, for agile, DevOps, and cloud environments, there are not many clear control documentations available. So these differences become even bigger, even huge, because of which there is a lack of uniformity and clear understanding on the security posture of the company, which is a problem not only for the company itself, but for DNB and the society in general. To talk about our problem statement and how we overcome this, I will hand it over to Erwin.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Kartik. As stated by Yuri already, we were both working in security within the insurance industry, in different companies, and also a little bit in a different position because I was more on the business side, Kartik was a little bit more on the IT side. And nevertheless, we saw the same questions, frustration, issues that were there, that people were saying. People on my side who were more like governance, risk, and compliance were asking questions where people that were working on the IT side were saying, "Yeah, you're not asking the right questions. It looks like you are having a sense of control and asking the right questions, but these are old questions." So the translated controls from these guidelines, yeah, they led to older controls like the standard idle things, change management, and things like that, and they were more fit for use within an what older waterfall kind of environment. So we saw the struggles both, and said, okay, maybe we can do something about it because we are real practitioners. So it's we like the academic research, but also that it leads to something. Can you do the next slide? So when you do research, there are numerous ways of doing research. What we liked of a very good approach was the design science research approach, and that leads to what is called an artifact. Artifact is a thing. It can be software or whatever. In our case, we said it will be a security compliance artifact. So it will be something that is tangible, you can use actually, in order to help solve the problem a little bit. So that was, can you do the next slide? Because if you look at, there are a few phases here. And the first one is that you have to be sure that what you see is not, that you're not the only one that sees this. So did we touch upon something that other people also saw? So we want to explicate the problem and see, are we touching upon something? What we did is we use LinkedIn. And LinkedIn, yeah, we see a lot of those surveys, so it's always the question, yeah, are people going to cooperate in this or not? We didn't know upfront. But as Yuri said, there were in total 125 respondents. And here you see the companies they were originating from. So that's quite a nice palette of companies. A lot of them are there, from banking to insurance and pension funds. So very interesting to see. We were very strict on who do we accept, because we want to have real input from people that are working actually in financial industry and also have experience in this specific area, so that they knew what they're talking about. Because yeah, first Kartik and I, we are already working a long time, and we have a lot of followers or relations on LinkedIn, and they all want to help, but not everybody is working in this sector, so that we had to shift them out. Although it's well meant, but it would cloud the entire conclusions. So in the end, we had 82 real input that we wanted to that we could use. Interesting was also that yeah, we asked a lot of questions. Do you recognize a problem, and what information do you use? Kind of sources you use in order to add to the controls from the DNB, and well, some interesting information was out there. It kind of confirmed the idea we had ourselves of these sources. There was the opportunity sometimes to that was more like a memo that they could say, okay, what's your general idea on this topic? And some people really, as you say in Dutch, they went loose on the topic. They were quite tasted a little bit of frustration that they were kind of bothered by people like us. And we were always asking about how do you do this, and how do you know it's secure, and we have evidence, and yeah, then. Sometimes even the idea was that we had with the old controls, we create a false sense of security because it's really looking in the review mirror, which often is already the case if you look at KPIs and things like that. But if you do this in an environment that so quickly changes as this environment, then your review mirror has been changed maybe dozens or maybe hundreds of times in between that you are looking. So you need a different approach than the old way of looking at a project plan and a request for change and things like that. So that was clear. Can you do the next slide, Kartik? Yeah, so we got all this information, and based on that, it was a confirmation. Said, okay, let's start defining and designing. And we looked at several angles. First of all, it was interesting to see there's the guidelines from the regulator, and we focused on Europe. At first, we looked bigger, but you see that all the respondents were most of them were European. So you look at IOPA because that's the mother of the frameworks, and it's translated to national implementations. We looked at them as well from different countries. Some countries do a copy and paste, so it's literally the same. We see in the Netherlands, you have the guideline, and it already adds value. We were very curious if there were other examples that were better, suitable for us, but yeah, DNB wasn't that bad, but it was a little bit old, and they knew themselves because were going to update. So we looked at that, and of course we looked at the standards. So NIST, ISF, ISO, COBIT, CIS. We saw a lot of ISF, which is not that open because you need to be a member of it. But if you look at the market, a lot of parties a lot of companies are an ISF member. So that was also a big source. And on the other hand, of course, you look at the needs from the market because the bigger companies, they are very worried about what they call market disruption. Those very fast fintech companies, and they feel the heat, and they also want to speed up. But on the other hand, they also need to comply. And it's interesting to see because we see that sometimes in the news with new companies that are very quick, and then something goes wrong. So you wonder how does that balance out the controls versus the fastness, the time to market. So that's interesting to see. What we did is next to those standards, we looked at more academical papers, about 92, or not about, but exactly 92, and 59 of them were relevant. So we looked at definitions and kind of general ideas, how to work. So that was interesting, and we incorporated that all in what we then call the information security compliance artifact. So it was our first version. Do you have the next slide, Kartik? And then all that hard labor, you want to know, does it make sense? So we came up with 14 teams and 48 practice statements. There was a lot of discussions between Kartik and me. What do you think? Okay, but this was the result. And did we touch upon something? Is it workable? And is it a solution for the problem? So we found 18 people very experienced, with more than 300 years of experience in this field, to give their opinion. very diverse group, and it's also a very diverse issue, because you have auditors, you have programmers, you have all kinds of people that need to work in that environment. So yeah, that's it's good to have such a group to look at the problem as a whole. And Yuri moderated this group, and you need something like that because you can imagine if you have 18 people in a room and you would start discussing, yeah, after 5 people it already gets a lot messy. So you need to have some kind of structure. So we had a session, it was a very intense session. I think it was 2 hours, maybe a little bit more, where questions were asked, and this gave us the insight. Is it workable? Do you think it's effective? Which controls do you think are the most effective ones? So that was very interesting. They confirmed our artifact that this really is an of added value, and to make it even better, they said, well, what you could do is also add information regarding Azure and AWS to your artifact. At least the reference is there, and then it becomes even better. Yeah, there are of course more cloud environments, but you have to time frame and you have to scope. So those are the 2 biggest ones. So we added that as well, and that was the end result. Okay, that was my part.
Yeah, thank you, Erwin. Security is a complex topic, and it is deemed a complex subject. And due to that, many requirements such as user access, encryption, it was very difficult for non-security professionals to understand them and implement them in the right order. Almost everybody likes to work with a checklist. So there was a checklist created with security controls with good intention on how the new security controls should look like with the help of Azure and AWS best practices, as Erwin just mentioned. The checklist of the controls details about what sort of evidences are required to prove that these controls are implemented properly in the modern world. And we saw that missing earlier. Due to the change in landscape, both in terms of methodology and technology, the old requirements, if they are applied to the modern way of working, it can lead to a lot of confusion. For I think an example would be a change management control, where I think we would like to have a signature approval of an asset owner of a change management board, changes tested in DTA before production, and those were all designed to mitigate the risk of unauthorized changes in the environment. However, in the modern environment, with the help of CI/CD pipeline, all of these requirements can be automated and coded so that no unauthorized change can take place without passing all the security requirements. But if we are going to ask the modern teams, the modern DevOps teams, to show us the old evidences like signature approval, snapshots of different environments, and so on, they won't even know and maybe understand our requirements, and they will get frustrated. So if we understand the risks for which these controls were defined, it can lead to a much more secure environment and also a compliant environment. It also establishes the fact that there is a dire need of modern school guidelines to help and support the engineers, the first line basically, to provide a minimum viable product which is both secured as well as compliant. One of the important finding, as Yuri mentioned, our research was focused on the financial sector, on the insurance companies in the Netherlands. But our research methodology is repeatable and reusable, and it can be used in other sectors and industries, which is happening now. And as Erwin mentioned, we had this 14 themes and 48 practice statements verified or by the industry experts. We believe that the qualitative research methodology we used can be applied and can be followed up in other sectors and industry with similar results. Though we are stating the obvious again to the security people here, we believe in security by design, and to achieve that there should be an effective alliance between business, IT, and security with the help of right tools and automation. Now, a sort of a drum roll movement. This is our end result, which shows our 14 themes into the well-versed people, process, and technology framework. I will dwell into a couple of them and explain how the new security requirements can be easily explained and demonstrated by modern teams. Let's look at, I think I talked about change management quite a lot, so let me also explain that with an example. In the modern way of working, we use infrastructure as a code, and it is used for provisioning and managing the infrastructure, which makes it not only easy to maintain and manage the environment, but it is also easier, in our opinion, to implement security controls. In the slide, so for example, the developer creates a new feature branch of the main develop branch. Developer makes changes according to the acceptance criteria noted down by the product owner or by the team. Developer commits to the code and pushes the changes to the origin or to the remote host. Before that, the CI/CD solution executes the following security requirements. The scan, for example, executes the code review, the SAST solution to identify the vulnerabilities. And when static code analysis is used in the CI/CD pipeline, any issues with the analysis result in a failed bit, for example, is forcing the developers to address these issues before the changes can be can move further. I think in the test environment, in the test stage, all the unit and integration test takes place. Any result in a failed build will require the developer's attention to work on it to make sure that it is properly reviewed and it is properly worked upon. Before any change is pushed into the production, there is a reviewer, and the reviewers are required to approve before these changes can be pushed into production. So it just tells you how easy it is to implement security controls in a modern agile way of working. Yeah. I think I'm sort of moving to the next part, where I think we talk about our conclusion. When we started our paper, we thought we are tackling a very local problem. But at the end of our paper, our observations are vastly different. With the help of support from the entire industry, we were able to find solutions and provide guidance to the problems currently faced by the first line, by the second line, and by the third line. Erwin showed that the tremendous support and response we got from the community, not only within Europe, but from outside also, which highlighted the fact that our artifact was the need of the hour. So I think end conclusions from the paper is to make our main aim was to make our community stronger in achieving real security and compliance that can be demonstrated to the regulatory bodies, not only to external but also to the internal parties. We realize that the new way of working will require risk management and auditor. I think the reviewers new and more forward-looking capabilities as they need to judge the evidence differently than they could do in a non-tech born company with a more traditional way of working. We also reached out to DNB in sharing our final work with them. And as you can see, it is also reflected in their latest version of Tutsing SCADA or standard of best practice. And I think we also want to share some personal reflections. I think both of us, as Erwin mentioned, are are practitioners with more years of experience. We often like the practical approach to a problem. Having said that, exploring it from a academic side gave us a much broader view and also helped us in understanding the background information and topics that is useful in most of the cases. We hope that our work will make a difference in your companies. It certainly made a difference in our company, and we also hope it will make a difference in the financial sector in general. Erwin, do you want to add something here?
Well, basically, yeah, we experienced the same thing. What I also did find out, and I saw with a lot of other people that that did research, it's quite challenging if you read all those articles to stick to your goal, because before you know it, but maybe that's me. There's a lot of interesting information in these articles, and before you know it, you have read 10 different articles that were not on the topic, but they were very interesting. So that was also. But I like to read a lot, so it wasn't a punishment for me. But it can be challenging to stick to the topic, and yeah, so it is yeah, lock on target. And yeah, for me, it was also where can you add value the most then after this? Because you learn a lot of information, and that it's not only by this study, but also within the entire education at the Antwerp Management School. You learn a lot of people, you learn to know them, and yeah, that really makes you think, how can I add value? Where can I add the most? And how can I do that? So that's an interesting journey, which is still going on, I think, in my case. So yeah, that's about it.
Thanks. We wanted to have more questions at the back end, so I think that's why we are sort of speeding up our presentation. But if you want more examples, we are also ready to give more examples of how it helped us. So now we come to the question part.
Yeah, I think we do have a very interesting question, actually, that will take a bit of our time. Apologies for that. So basically, we do have an excellent question here. Could you also refer and reflect to DNB GP 2023 and DORA? And Maria also sent the DNB good practice for the 2023 PDF. So can you maybe comment on that one?
So, I think, sorry, I didn't, the PDF?
I will repeat the question. So Maria said, could you also refer and reflect to DNB good practices 2023? That's one question. And let's say, comma, and DORA. So I know that we had the discussion just before the session about DORA. So maybe if you can comment, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll answer the first question about the standard of good practices that DNB published in 2023. We talked to DNB. Our paper was before that, actually. So we had a talk. I think I showed you a photo of a lady. She was in I think we had good communication with her, and and I think Yuri will talk. Yuri had a more interaction with her, but we actually presented our paper to her, and she was very happy with our results. And I think as we can see in the final Tutsingskada, some of our observations were taken into account.
Yeah, I just want to hint, because you didn't mention that she worked for DNB. So
Yeah.
the lady in question, she worked for DNB. Okay, then the second part of the question was about DORA. And we have a couple of questions coming afterwards, but I wanted to know your reflection on DORA and your research paper.
Maybe you know best, Kartik and Yuri, because for me the distance to the financial industry is a little bit bigger nowadays. I did look at the Toetsingskaart because I had an assignment there. I liked it, to be honest, the new one. So that's interesting. And just a little bit to add to what you said, Kartik, because she said, well, we have a lot of examples in our document, in our research, what you could do. We said, well, if we would, we work for NN and Achmea, so these are big companies, so they have these controls in place. She said, well, we cannot say that this needs to be a standard for the entire sector, because the entire industry, because that's not feasible. But we can use them as examples, as a best practice or a good practice you could use. So that's also a remark she made. So, but on DORA, yeah, of course, it's a lot of information there. There's a lot of, but I'm not directly at the moment. For me, it's more NIS2 and things like that at the moment.
Yeah, I think if you see, I think the DORA requirements, for example, I think are more finely defined now by the regulators. But I think the Tutsingskada, I think if you have implemented it in the right way, I would say I think majority of the controls that is required for DORA are already met. There are, I think I'm not saying that we are 100%, once you implement the Tutsingskada requirements, you will be 100% compliant to DORA. That's not what we are saying, but I think majority of the requirements are not completely different. If you are following the DNB's standard of best practice, if you are properly implementing them, tracking them and testing them, majority of the controls as required by DORA can be implemented. And the remaining part, of course, I think are the new requirements, so which has to be implemented by the company, by the organizations themselves. Yuri, you want to add something on that?
Yeah, so perhaps a good addition on that is that both ECB as well as DNB asked also to our institute, because we do this research now for 30 years into IT governance and security practices. Can you help next to the DNB Toetsingskader also on zero trust practices? And can you also help on how to make these overlap? Because, for example, the NIS2 and DORA specifically mention you should implement zero trust principles. But what do we mean with that? And that was also the question from the regulator. Can we make that more explicit, similar like Kartik and Erwin did for DNB Toetsingskader? Can you make more explicit how it works for software development? We did the same thing, but that was not part of this research for zero trust practices, or make more explicit what do we mean and how do these regulatory requirements have overlap with zero trust technical measures. I'll put that link in the chat, so you also have reference on that. And then also SWIFT for the international money clearance came to us and said, can you do the same for us, because we also have a huge demand from our institutes to implement zero trust more on a technical level and what it entails. So then it's good that you have industries working together on making things more pragmatic and more tangible of the how, not only the what, but also the how you should do those things. So that's an add-on for me, Kartik, on the question that was raised. And to add to that point, Kartik, you mentioned about this method. So the method of large group collaboration or longitudinal research, as we mentioned, if you want to do this in an industry on a longer term than just one research project from, for example, 1 year or 2 years, but you want to do this over multiple years in multiple iterations, the method that Erwin and Kartik here applied with this group support system is appeared to be a very fruitful and beneficial manner to do this. So that's, I think, also something that we've learned out of this research that we can multiply to other industries as well, and that we're also currently doing.
Yeah, if I can comment also, Yuri, we hosted within the Square Tables 2 very nice DORA webinars. They're both on our YouTube channel, so you can check them out. We also hosted a physical event from a legal perspective on DORA in Utrecht a few months ago. So that also was a very good reference. And I'm here not trying to be a marketing guy, but if you register to the risk event, we do have a very interesting workshop on DORA also. So that could help in more details. We have one question again. Oh, 1 second. There was a comment also by Paul that from 17th January 2025, DORA kind of replaces the good practices information veiliging for 2023, which is a known fact. But replacement doesn't mean that the old good practices are bad. They are good practices for a reason. So indeed, the legal requirements becomes DORA, but that doesn't mean the good practices are bad. We have a question from Robert. How can the CISO see to what extent the control is covered by any mitigating measure and provide evidence for assurance purposes? That's a generic question, maybe due to the research nature.
Yeah, I think many organizations use, I think, their first line security people for assurance, and second line for reviewing the evidences, and also maybe the third line to sort of provide a security assurance on whether the controls are properly implemented or not. So I think if you have a cyclic process in place wherein the controls are properly tracked, as we call it, tracked, tested, and verified by all the three lines of defense, then I think I would say that the CISO can be a much can provide a definite answer on how these controls are implemented and whether the controls, and if the controls are implemented in a right manner or not.
I would expect within the financial industry that a lot of companies already have this cycle of test of control. You don't see that in every organization yet, at least not on that maturity level. But that basically is what you do. Yeah, you do the test of control, and these new environments, they also you can automate your controls very easily, and you can the evidence can be generated automatically. So if you do it in the right way and you implement it in the proper way, it helps you a lot. For instance, in your pipeline, as Kartik showed. If you don't do anything like that, then it quickly spins out of control. So it's an opportunity, but you need to do it in the right way. Yeah.
Can maybe, Erwin, since you said like you've seen some entities which are not up to the maturity level, can you comment a little bit about what kind of obstacles get these entities, especially financial industry? I don't think the problem is the finances. I come from telecom industry where the problem is finances, just to be very frank with you. We know the technology aspect, we can do the people aspect, but of course the driver is the money, and we lack that. And also we, to some extent, process is something that majority of technologists don't like, to be honest. But from financial perspective, you're regulated. Usually, like on a cybersecurity perspective, they should be the most mature sector. So when you say control testing doesn't happen, from your experience, what obstacles are seen?
Not in that sector indeed, because what you see is that DNB, I think, is the most mature regulator that's in the Netherlands. So you see that there's a lot of push in that direction, but yeah, I go a long way already. So if I look back 20 years ago, for instance, security was not very interesting, not at all. So now when you work within an insurance company, they will probably say, is it done secure? and if you work there, then they ask your help actively. Please, can you help us because we want to work in a secure, compliant way. But in other sectors, that's not often the case. Then you really need to work for your position in the company to explain things that, we think already are a normal practice and common sense. Because you want to create something that also keeps on working in the longer run and stays secure. But you see a lot of organizations that are working in this agile way and doing the Sec DevOps. They forget the Sec and also often the Ops. So they are very focused on creating functionality. But in the end, functionality needs to be managed. And then I often say security is like the cherry on the pie. But sometimes there is not even a foundation of the pie, so you have, you have some. What do you have? It doesn't look that nice. So, but I think that what you see now, how it's going in the European Union as a whole, is that you see there's a lot more pressure on it. And I think it will change in a lot of sectors, and it will take some time. So it's. When you have a strong regulator and it really has an impact that you do not follow rules and legislation, then then it will start working because I think that's also what we saw in finance, because in the beginning it was also not such on a high level as it was now. Of course, there was a lot of market pressure to banking is handling in how do you call it, trust. Trust is very important. So there is of course some push there, but that's not on every sector. So I think it's more like top down. You also need to be you need to feel the need for this from a management perspective, and then money and things etc. can follow.
Yeah, I think when we were doing our masters, for example, there were people from different sector. We were complaining about, how the control should be implemented and it's not implemented. We were working in financial sector, whereas people working in non-financial sector, oh, you guys are talking way far too much in advance. I think we don't even have a proper, place in the security. Everybody talks about availability. Availability is of course of utmost importance to most of them, but the other two pillars, basically the confidentiality and integrity, are usually not taken into account unless and until a big incident happens, and then everybody then talks about, oh, I think the sort of got leaked and GDPR, and then we have to do something about it. But I think financial sector, we have the early advantage, I could say.
I think to add to that, is that you're talking about large financial institutes that are under supervision of DNB and are on the top of the iceberg to be under supervision. But let's not forget that we have a whole mid-market enterprise organization that are smaller, that truly struggle with implementing all these regulations. I put an example in the chat where I think this community also has a role to look at more proportional implementing security requirements. So not overwhelming smaller companies with a huge amount of controls and standards, but really look at it more in a pragmatic way to help this company become compliant to the minimum norm. And I think we all have a task there because we're all very professional. We know what's needed. We also know what is sufficient enough to pass audits or to pass the license that companies want to have to operate in their country.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have further questions, but I want to have let's say, comment from each one of the three of you about one thing. You all know the security skills workforce gap. We have a lot of jobs, and the skill set is scarce. And with the coming regulations, this is going to be even more stressful on the companies to hire professionals. Some entities in the market wanted to introduce, let's say, junior certification to get people in as quick. Even they vowed for 1 million professional within X amount of years. ISACA didn't do that, but we're trying to help the community in a different way. What do you think is a proper solution? I would love to start with Yuri, and then I'll be back to you, Karthik and Erwin, for your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yuri,
so I
what
have
do
a
you think
very
about that?
outspoken opinion about. We did last week we had this about diversity of building
Yep.
security teams, etc. So also anticipating on roles that are not here but will be coming opportune, let's say in the coming 2 to 5 years. Where there, first of all, there is a gap, but first of all, we also need to cross a gap that we think we know it all by keep on working in the same way as we did over the past 5 to 10 years, where basically we're now completely need to shift also our own way of working. And I have written down 3 where I would say mantras that I'll put in the chat. Today published on the ISACA, by the way, on the ISACA website. I'm not going to mention all 3 of them, but I think one is a very important one. That is reuse existing controls that are there. So where you can apply practices like test once and comply to many. So you test once and you can comply to a security requirement, a privacy requirement, an insurance requirement. And the other one is, for example, turn the burden of proof around, meaning that if you have 31 million absolute number of companies to be audited for the coming years in the European Union, that's massive. That even the regulator is not capable of doing that, but also we are not able to implement that because we don't have the talent for it. And so we need to turn the burden of proof around, meaning that we need to work towards in control statements, similar like we do with our VAT statements, BTW-aangifte. So the VAT statement needs to be a standard way of reporting from companies to the regulator, and the regulator can do sample-based checking on, okay, are these companies up to par? And I think that's also up to our more experienced professionals, as we are here in the call with all of us, to teach and learn also the younger generation on, okay, let's look different to our own profession and let's innovate how we can make it more simpler and more digestible for smaller companies to survive in the EU, because otherwise we won't survive. If you please listen to the Mario Draghi report that he presents, I put the link in, but please listen to it, and you'll see that we have a task here as security and risk professionals to really work on looking at ourselves and reflect on how we currently do it. It's not sustainable for the future.
Okay. Thank you, Karthik.
I think within the financial sector, everybody is talking about security controls, testing, automation. Automation will, I think Yuri also touched upon it, automation will save a lot of time. And if you, I gave just an example of change management, for example. If you are using pipeline, I think that control, understand the essence of the control and implement it in the right manner. It is not required that we go look at checklist and then look at like what evidences are needed, but risk based, look at what sort of risks is the control is what type of risks are there and how it can be mitigated. It should not be that we go by a checklist and then check every requirement line by line. If the risk is mitigated, I think I would look for more automated, pragmatic controls.
Excellent. Thank you, Karthik. And Erwin, can you give us your view on that one?
I'm looking at a bit of a different angle. Automation. That's of course also very important. So can help us a lot. I hosted an event for PVIB regarding sourcing with Barry Derksen, also a professor who teaches at AMS. So I asked him and Willem van der Valk to give their opinion about this sourcing issue. Because what I was seeing in my daily practice, that we were searching for the sheep with 5 legs, as we say, but maybe even 9 legs or whatever. And everybody is kind of fishing in that same pond. And it doesn't work, because if they are out there, they are doing something similar as I do. They become a freelancer maybe. So it's difficult. So you have to fine tune the right person for the job, and sometimes it's good to have a freelancer because that's the way Brian looked at it. Was interesting. Sometimes he said, well, sometimes I use a freelancer, sometimes I use of the big 5 companies, for instance, because they're very knowledgeable on this. But also, what is interesting is that he said, well, I look at the younger people that just come from school, like Breinstein, and you have those kinds of institutes. They really need to learn the work because you learn by doing. You can hire them to do some standard work, but then you have to standardize, of course. So you have to be very good, and if you have to do a business impact assessment, that's no rocket science. It doesn't have to be, or risk analysis, but you need to standardize and you need to help them. And they personally, I like doing these assessments because you touch the entire organization. You can look at it as very tedious, but I've seen the most interesting new initiatives within Achmea, for instance, that I thought, oh, it's really very, very on the edge of technology. So that's always interesting. So you can use them as well, and if it fits and they like the company and they like the work, then you can hire them permanently. So I think that's a good one. For the rest, personally, I teach at the University of Applied Science just to also do my bit of that. And also when people are looking for an internship, you have to. I would say you have to try to accommodate it because a lot of times people say I don't have time. Yeah, I never have time because I'm always busy. But we should try it because if we don't do it, how are they going to learn? So I think that we also have a responsibility there as a community to help this. And after 13 or 14 years, I will stop working. So and I still want it to be secure. So then I want someone else to take my place. So so that's how I look at it.
Yep. Thank you so much. Thank you, Yuri. Thank you, Karthik. Thank you, everyone, for a nice talk tonight. And thanks to my co-organizer and co-host, Givo. I wish you all a great evening. And thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah.
Oh, most welcome.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Yep. Thank you. You too.